September 19, 1944. Héricourt, France. 0540 hours. Hauptmann. Klaus Becker, 31, commander of 3rd Company, 113th Panzer Brigade, led 17 Panther tanks through morning fog toward the town of Héricourt. His Panthers carried 75mm guns capable of destroying any American tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards. Their frontal armor was nearly impenetrable to most American weapons. Becker's orders were clear. Drive the Americans back across the Moselle River. Relieve pressure on German forces defending the frontier. The fog would hide his advance until his Panthers were within point-blank range of American positions. But what Becker didn't know was that American doctrine had evolved past the tank-versus-tank battles he'd studied. The Americans weren't sending Shermans to fight Panthers anymore. They were sending something faster, something smaller, something that broke every rule of German tank warfare. What happened in the next 3 hours would destroy Becker's company and force Wehrmacht tank commanders to reconsider everything they knew about armored combat. By September 1944, the American advance across France had stalled along Germany's frontier. Patton's Third Army, driving east from Normandy, faced increasingly determined German resistance. Hitler had ordered counteroffensives to halt Allied momentum. The 5th Panzer Army, under General Hasso von Manteuffel, concentrated near Héricourt to strike Patton's exposed flank. German armored doctrine was straightforward and proven. Heavy tanks like the Panther and Tiger achieved victory through superior guns and armor. These vehicles could destroy American Sherman tanks at ranges where Shermans couldn't penetrate German armor. German tactics emphasized long-range engagements, hull-down defensive positions, and concentration of firepower. This doctrine had worked well for 3 years across Russia and North Africa. The arrival of Panthers in 1943 reinforced the approach. With sloped frontal armor 80mm thick and a high-velocity 75mm gun, Panthers dominated most battlefield encounters. American tankers learned to fear them. 5 or 6 Shermans were often needed to destroy a single Panther, usually by flanking. Maneuvers that exposed American tanks to devastating German fire. But American tank destroyer doctrine approached the problem differently. Tank destroyers weren't tanks. They weren't designed to slug it out toe-to-toe with German heavyweights. They were designed to avoid, maneuver, and ambush. The M18 Hellcat, introduced in mid-1944, embodied this philosophy perfectly. The M18 weighed 20 tons, less than half the Panther's 45 tons. Its armor was minimal, barely 13mm on the front hull, thinner than an armored car. A German 75mm shell would punch through M18 armor like paper. But the M18 possessed one revolutionary capability: speed. Its continental radial engine and lightweight design gave the M18 a top speed of 55 miles per hour on roads, 35 miles per hour cross-country. No tracked vehicle in World War II was faster. The M18's 76mm gun couldn't penetrate a Panther's frontal armor beyond 300 yards, but it could destroy Panthers from the side or rear at any combat range. American tank destroyer doctrine emphasized exactly this approach. Don't fight where the enemy is strong. Move faster than the enemy can respond. Attack from unexpected angles. Shoot and relocate before return fire arrives. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, equipped with M18s, arrived at Héricourt as part of the 4th Armored Division in early September 1944. The battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel George Davidson, had studied reports of Panther capabilities from Normandy. He concluded that meeting Panthers head-on meant defeat. The solution was refusing to meet them head-on. Company C of the 704th, commanded by Captain Tom Evans, deployed to defend Héricourt's southern approaches on September 18th. Evans positioned his 4 platoons of M18s in concealed positions with open ground, providing clear fields of fire but also allowing rapid withdrawal routes behind hills and through wooded areas. He emphasized to his crews that they were not dug-in defenders. They were mobile ambush predators. When Becker's Panthers emerged from fog on the morning of September 19th, they expected to find American Shermans or infantry positions. Instead, 4 M18s from Lieutenant Ed Leiper's platoon opened fire from a depression 400 yards away, hitting the lead Panthers from the side before German crews registered what was happening. The first engagement lasted 90 seconds. Leiper's M18s fired, hit 3 Panthers, then withdrew at full speed before German return fire could be organized. German crews reported being engaged, and then having their attackers disappear into fog and terrain before retaliation was possible. This pattern violated everything German doctrine prepared them for. Becker attempted to pursue, but M18s simply outran his Panthers. On roads, Panthers could reach 28 miles per hour. M18s could maintain 40 miles per hour, while withdrawing, firing, occasionally, never staying exposed long enough for German gunners to acquire solid targets. By 06:30 hours, Company C had destroyed 7 Panthers while suffering no losses. The German attack stalled. Becker's remaining Panthers attempted to form defensive positions, expecting American reinforcements to counterattack. Instead, M18s continued hit-and-run attacks from multiple directions. German crews reported feeling hunted rather than engaged in battle. At 07:45 hours, Captain Evans coordinated all 3 platoons for a simultaneous attack from 3 sides against Becker's concentrated Panthers. M18s appeared, fired, and withdrew within seconds. Panthers attempted to return fire, but targets vanished before guns could train on them. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. 5 more Panthers were destroyed or disabled. 2 M18s were hit. Both survived and withdrew under their own power. By 0900 hours, Becker had lost 14 of his 17 Panthers. He ordered withdrawal. The German counteroffensive at Aracourt had failed on the first day. German after-action reports from September 19th expressed confusion and frustration. Panther crews reported being engaged by fast-moving targets they couldn't track. They described feeling ambushed repeatedly from unexpected directions. They noted that American tank destroyers refused to stand and fight, making German advantages in armor and gun power irrelevant. Oberst Meinrad von Lauchert, commanding the 2nd Panzer Division, which included the 113th Panzer Brigade, wrote in his September 20th report, "American tank destroyer tactics are unlike anything encountered in previous operations. These vehicles do not defend positions in the traditional sense. They attack, withdraw, and attack again from different locations with extraordinary speed. Our Panthers cannot bring their superior guns to bear because targets do not remain stationary long enough for accurate fire. We must develop new tactics to counter this mobile threat. But developing new tactics required time and resources Germany no longer possessed." The fighting at Aracourt continued for 9 days. By September 29th, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had destroyed or damaged 39 German tanks and assault guns against losses of 7 M18s. The Germans abandoned their counteroffensive and withdrew. The battle demonstrated several principles that challenged conventional armored warfare thinking. Heavy armor and powerful guns were worthless if they couldn't hit the target. Speed and mobility created tactical advantages that offset inferiority in protection. Doctrine that emphasized maneuver over firepower could defeat doctrine emphasizing firepower over maneuver. German tank crews who survived Aracourt spoke with grudging respect about American tank destroyers. Lieutenant Hans Pfeiffer, a Panther commander captured October 2nd near Aracourt, provided detailed testimony to American intelligence officers. "We'd been told American tanks were inferior and crews were poorly trained. This was true of their Sherman tanks earlier in the campaign. But these M18 tank destroyers operated differently. Crews seemed well-trained and confident. They used terrain expertly, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Most frustrating was our inability to force decisive combat. When we tried to close the distance, they withdrew faster than we could pursue. When we formed defensive positions, they attacked from sides or rear. We had better vehicles on paper. They had better tactics in practice. The M18's success wasn't unique to Aracourt. Similar patterns emerged across the European theater wherever M18 battalions encountered German armor. In December 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion defending Bastogne destroyed 27 German tanks on Christmas Day alone, losing 6 M18s. The speed and mobility that defined M18 tactics proved decisive in delaying German advances long enough for reinforcements to arrive. But M18's success came with caveats. The vehicle's light armor made it extremely vulnerable if caught in the open without room to maneuver. Several M18 battalions suffered heavy losses when forced into static defensive roles without the mobility advantage. The 634th Tank Destroyer Battalion lost 17 M18s in 3 days during March 1945, fighting in Germany when trapped in urban terrain that negated speed. Advantages. The M18 succeeded when used, according to its design doctrine. Fast, aggressive, mobile ambush tactics. It failed when forced into roles better suited to tanks with heavier armor. This highlighted a broader truth. Technology and equipment matter less than using them according to sound doctrine that matches capabilities to situations. German responses to M18 tactics evolved slowly. By early 1945, German tank commanders were instructed to maintain greater situational awareness, post observers to watch flanks and rear, avoid concentration in areas where rapid withdrawal was difficult. But these were reactive adjustments, not systematic doctrine changes. Germany lacked the time, resources, and training capacity to truly adapt to American tank destroyer methods. After the war, German tank officers who had studied or experienced American tank destroyer tactics wrote about them with professional admiration. General Major F.W. von Mellenthin, who commanded German panzer divisions on both eastern and western fronts, published his memoirs in 1956. His assessment of American tank destroyers was telling. The M18 Hellcat represented American pragmatism at its finest. Rather than attempting to match our heavy tanks in armor and firepower, which would have required years of development, the Americans built vehicles optimized for speed and tactical flexibility. They accepted vulnerability in exchange for mobility. Then they trained crews in doctrine that exploited mobility while minimizing vulnerability. The result was a weapon system more effective in practice than its technical specifications suggested it should be. This American talent for practical solutions over theoretical ideals proved decisive in many aspects of the war. Von Mellenthin's observation applied beyond tank warfare. It described American approach to military problems generally. Find what works, build doctrine around it, train everyone in that doctrine. Americans weren't trying to build the theoretically best tank destroyer. They built one that worked given available resources and technology, then maximized its effectiveness through tactics and training. The human element behind tank destroyer success deserves recognition. Captain Tom Evans, whose Company C performed brilliantly at Aracourt, received the Distinguished Service Cross for his leadership during the battle. His citation noted that he personally manned the gun of a disabled M18 and destroyed 2 Panthers while his crew conducted repairs. Evans survived the war, returned to civilian life, and rarely discussed his service. His family learned details only after his death in 1992, when military historians researching the Aracourt battle contacted them. Staff Sergeant Joseph Sadowski, an M18 gunner with the 704th, destroyed 5 German tanks during September 1944. His crew nicknamed their M18 Little Demon and painted 5 kill rings on the barrel. Sadowski's post-war interview in 1988 provided insight into crew perspectives. We knew our armor wouldn't stop German guns. Everybody knew that. So we didn't plan on getting hit. We planned on not being there when they shot. Speed was our armor. Surprise was our weapon. The 76mm gun was just accurate enough and powerful enough if we got side shots. Our training emphasized quick firing and immediate relocation. We practiced until we could fire, button up, and be moving within 20 seconds. That's what kept us alive. Germans had better tanks on paper. We had better tactics on the ground. The M18 program faced criticism before and during the war. Some Army officers argued that light armor made tank destroyers death traps. They advocated for heavier vehicles with better protection. The M36 tank destroyer, introduced late in the war with heavier armor and a 90mm gun, represented this alternative philosophy. But M36s were slower, less maneuverable, and couldn't execute the hit-and-run tactics that made M18s effective post-war. Analysis by the Army Ground Forces determined that M18 battalions achieved higher kill ratios and lower loss rates than M36 battalions when used. According to proper tank destroyer doctrine, M36s performed better in static defensive roles or situations requiring assault gun capabilities. Each had its place. Neither was objectively superior. Mission and doctrine determined effectiveness, not raw specifications. This lesson remains relevant today in military procurement and doctrine development. The temptation always exists to build the most powerful, best protected, highest performance equipment possible. But optimal equipment isn't what performs best in isolation. It's what performs best given realistic tactics, training levels, logistical constraints, and operational contexts. The M18 succeeded because American doctrine matched vehicle capabilities to realistic battlefield employment. German heavy tank doctrine succeeded in many contexts, but created vulnerabilities that M18s exploited. No tactical approach is perfect. Every approach creates opportunities for opponents who adapt faster and exploit weaknesses more effectively. Today, the M18 Hellcat is studied in armor officer courses worldwide as an example of speed and maneuverability offsetting firepower and protection disadvantages. The tactics developed by M18 battalions in 1944 influenced development of modern mobile anti-tank doctrine emphasizing shoot-and-scoot tactics, pre-planned firing positions with covered withdrawal routes, and exploitation of terrain for concealment. At the Patton Museum at Fort Knox, a restored M18 Hellcat is displayed with information plaques describing the Aracourt battle. Veterans and military professionals visiting the museum often spend significant time examining the vehicle, noting its thin armor, relatively small gun, and surprisingly compact size. The contrast between the M18 and nearby German Panther display highlights the design philosophy differences. A comment in the museum guestbook from 2015, written by a German military officer attending a training course at Fort Knox, reflected on the display thoughtfully. Standing between the M18 and Panther, I understand better why my grandfather's generation lost the war. We built the technically superior tank. You built the tank that worked better in practice. Technical superiority without tactical adaptability is just expensive metal. Your M18 crews proved that in 1944. The lesson applies beyond tank warfare. In any competitive field, adaptability matters more than raw capability. Organizations and militaries that learn this lesson thrive. Those that don't lose. That lesson echoes across decades. The side with the most powerful weapons doesn't automatically win. The side that uses available weapons most effectively, that adapts fastest to changing conditions, that builds doctrine-matching capabilities to requirements, that side wins. In 1944, German tanks were better vehicles than M18 tank destroyers in almost every measurable way. But M18 battalions destroyed more German tanks than they lost M18s because doctrine, training, and tactics beat specifications. The M18 Hellcat was fast enough to choose when to fight and when to withdraw. That freedom of choice, that ability to impose tactical conditions rather than accept them, was worth more than thick armor or a bigger gun. German Panthers were trapped by their own strength. They couldn't run. They had to stand and fight wherever they were. M18s were free because they were fast. Freedom to choose creates advantage that pure power cannot match. In warfare, in business, in competition of any kind, mobility creates options. Options create advantage. Speed isn't just about going fast. It's about having choices your opponent doesn't have. That was the M18's secret. Not that it was fast, that speed gave it freedom to fight on its own terms. And fighting on your own terms beats fighting on enemy terms no matter how strong you are.